when it comes to Trump's policy on Israel, I think we would probably agree it's definitely better than Biden's and would be better than Kamala Harris's, and is still, unfortunately, and better than the rest of the world because of how bad the rest of the world is being. Yet, in the last week or so, I think there were a lot of statements from Trump, a lot of actions from Trump that are contributing to the sort of propaganda that is being put on Israel and actions that are being put on Israel. So today we'll discuss basically the last week of Trump's statements. I think we'll start from like maybe like the most positive and we'll go to the worst. But we'll start with the most recent topic, which is Steve Witkoff visiting the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. With that, welcome to the reality show. Today's episode is sponsored by the Objectivist Guide to the Galaxy. Link to them is in the chat and in the description, and more about it later in the video. Joining me today are Stuart Margolis and Anders Ingemarsson. Thank you guys for joining me today. And before I jump to the first story, I'll go to you, Anders, first. What do you make of, we are, since the inauguration, we are about 7 months in. So, what do you make of Trump's policy when it comes to Israel so far, and maybe more recently, like about the last week or so?
Uh, so there have been some positives. The joining Israel in attacking Iran, I think, is at the top of the list. But I think it's a disgrace that he then demanded a ceasefire, and we didn't see regime change in Iran. So that I definitely hold against him when it was this close to make that happen. Otherwise, I try not to pay too much attention to Donald Trump because you don't know what he's going to say from day to day. And, whatever he does say today, he may change his mind tomorrow. So most recently, he has voiced the opinion that Hamas is, the source of what's going on here right now and Hamas must get out of Gaza. And then he is saying, I think, that the hostages must be released. None of that will happen because the hostages is what keeps Hamas in power, and that's their only trump card left. And the fact that Hamas is, the other thing, their trump card is the hostages, but the other thing is that they know that they can direct world opinion in their favor for as long as they keep the Palestinian or the Gaza people suffering, whether that is through a lack of humanitarian aid or starvation, supposed starvation, or through military oppression. It doesn't matter, but that's their modus operandum, and that's the only thing that still keeps them in power. So, and Trump, I'm sure, doesn't fully understand that. And again, what Trump is saying, I don't tend to put too much emphasis on it because, as I said again, he may change his mind tomorrow.
We have a super chat from Jeff. Thank you so much. And just to comment on something you said, Anders, I tried to not pay too much attention to Trump also, but then he became the U.S. president and he made it a bit harder than I would want. Stuart,
This is your job, right? I only have to be on once a week, so.
fair enough. I like following the news, so yeah, it's although it's not always the funnest or the most entertaining thing. Stuart, any of your opening thoughts about Trump's action, since January 20th and also more recently?
I agree entirely with Anders. I would take it even further. I think Trump is so irrational and so erratic that I think it's a mistake to really pay much attention to any one thing he says. it is likely to be contradicted, sometimes in the same speech, sometimes in the same, public outing. I think for that reason, even I think it's debatable whether you can say with certainty that Trump is better for Israel than Biden or Harris. They would have been terrible, but they would have been terrible in a somewhat consistent way. Trump is just a wild card, and who knows what he'll do from day to day and minute to minute. I think much more than his bad policies is his bad epistemology and metaphysics. He's a whim worshiper. He doesn't really believe that reality is important. So, or that the truth is important, or that knowledge is important. He doesn't believe in any of that. So I think it makes it very difficult to plan for the future when you have someone like that essentially leading the free world. Obviously, when he does do something good, like aid Israel in bombing Iran, that's great. But applauding him, I did make a positive statement about that when it happened. But then immediately I felt foolish for doing that because he didn't follow through and do what needed to be done. So it's like, well, was that I guess he bought us maybe a few months, but he didn't do what needed to be done. So ultimately, did it help? I don't know.
We have a super chat from Apollo Zeus. Thank you so much. So I do want to go into Gaza Humanitarian Foundation story, but yeah, maybe just a quick sort of my words about sort of like, is it better or not? I mean, whenever comparing presidents, it's always hard because the fact is Trump is the president, and whatever Kamala Harris's presidency would be is now just a void. We cannot know what would happen. We cannot know if it would be just continuation of Biden, which would still be bad enough, or if it would be tougher, if she would move to the recognizing of Palestinian state, or what exactly would it mean. That's why I think somebody in the chat said, I don't know if you can hear background noise. Let me know, but okay, good. There's somebody cutting grass for some reason right next to my window. But somebody said that sort of like Trump is much better a friend to Israel than the Democrats or the Squad would be, or Mamdani. And when talking about that, sort of the reason for this episode should always be, or when you criticize or discuss a president, it should always be not comparing him to others. That's what you do when you vote. But the election is over. Now you judge him based on what he's actively doing. And so with that, let's actually discuss some of the parts. So
yeah, if I may
yeah,
just chime in, I thought what Stuart was saying about Trump being a whim worshiper, I think it's really important, that the man has no principle other than what benefits Donald Trump is the only principle, if you can call that a principle. And I mean, he is the epitome of a pragmatist president. When you have no principles to follow, then you become a weather vane, right? You kind of turn where the wind is blowing, and that makes you weak. So in that sense, Donald Trump is a very, very weak president.
Bonnie in the chat is asking, how did it help Israel or semi-free world for Trump to stop Israel from removing Khamenei? And I'm not sure if we ever got the full story on that, because some of the reports said that apparently Trump was the one who stopped the Israeli assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei. And then Netanyahu came out saying that basically there never was an opportunity to take out Khamenei, basically because he was either underground the whole time and there was never an opportunity. So we don't have sort of like an official knowing what happened. We just have sort of like basically reports claiming different things. We have a super chat from Kirill. Thank you so much. And so let's cover the first story, and it's Witkoff and also Mike Huckabee visiting the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, and Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel, visited one of the 8 sites. Basically, the goal was to see the conditions and see how it's working. Donald Trump has said around that we want to make sure people are getting food. People are very hungry. And when asked about how Netanyahu is handling the situation, he said he's certainly capable person, good management. And when he was asked about the theft of aid, he said good management will prevent that. Hopefully, the Israelis can do it. And comments from Witkoff was basically I don't think he like had sort of like a full sort of like press conference or sort of commenting on it yet, but he basically just talked about how Israel is doing an incredible feat with the distribution of the aid, and Mike Huckabee was saying very similar things. So Anders, any thoughts about because on some level, sending Steve Witkoff to see them can be seen as basically not trusting the operation enough. Basically, Israel is not actually doing what is necessary. Of course, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a sort of like a joint, I'm not sure if we can call it venture, but sort of like a joint operation by America and Israel. What do you make of Steve Witkoff's visit?
Well, let's pull back a little bit and let me first answer what I think about this whole humanitarian aid situation. I read an article yesterday that mentioned that this is the biggest humanitarian aid effort in history since the Berlin airlift after the wall was erected, and that was in support of people that were allied. This is in support of your enemy. So, the fact that the US is on the ground and not taking a stance in favor of ending this war rather than just continue with this humanitarian aid, which will just progress or prolong the suffering of the people. And here I put blame on Israel too, because Israel has not prosecuted this war as a rational society would do. They would have taken out Hamas a long time ago, and Gaza would have been on the path towards rebuilding and supporting itself by now, and world opinion would have moved on to most likely to whatever else world opinion want to cover. So that I put partly on Israel. Now the fact that Witkoff is there and visiting with Huckabee, yeah, I really don't have an opinion of that and what he's saying. I just think it's a fool's errand in the first place to give humanitarian aid to your enemy.
Stuart, any thoughts? I guess both on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation efforts as well as sort of the recent visit by Steve Witkoff.
I mean, I agree with everything that Anders said. I am torn between, nobody wants to see innocent women and children starving. It's debatable how innocent, any of the adults in this area are, but I don't know. I mean, I lean towards the idea that they should suffer the consequences of their support of Hamas. And while I don't think that Israel should be deliberately targeting civilians, I also don't think it's Israel's job to be feeding them and supporting them in this way. And it's so hypocritical and really insane of the whole world community. I mean, there are actual famines happening in several places in the world where, literally people are starving, and the world looks away. The world pays no attention, but because Israel is involved, because it's the Jewish state involved, the entire focus is there. And as Anders said, this is apparently the biggest aid operation since the Berlin airlift. And I mean, that's just nuts to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have a super chat from Kirill. Thank you so much. And also, Kirill became an ARCUK YouTube member, so thank you so much for that. And we have one more super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. With that, yeah, I mean, when it comes to Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's since October 7, whenever we talk about Israeli sort of the way it was acting. Oh, also, I should have mentioned, Stuart, if you can boost your microphone a bit, that would be good. But yeah, basically, when it comes to sort of like talking about it properly, because the fact is, if the goal of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was simply to distribute aid, make sure it's not touched by Hamas, and that's it, and you ignore all the sort of like all the actual all the context of they shouldn't distribute aid, then they are very successful. But they are being attacked because of that. Whenever they are talked about, everybody talks about no, it shouldn't be Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It should be the UN. It should be the other NGOs that we know have collaborated with Hamas, that Hamas has used their vehicles to basically attack Israel, to wage war. We know members of specifically UNRWA are also members of Hamas. So we know all that, and people are still calling for that. So this is not about humanitarian aid. It's about shutting down Israel to make sure it cannot continue with waging this war. So let's listen to one more clip, which I think is sort of, let's say, a bit of a better side of Trump. So let's listen to this.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that you're rewarding Hamas if you do that, and I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas, and I'm not about to do that.
So hearing something like that reminds me of somebody who hears like a smart thing and wants to repeat it without really understanding what it is. Because if you truly understand, like, this is absolutely true. This is a reward for Hamas. He was talking, I'm not sure if it was mentioned in it, but he was talking about sort of several countries discussing recognizing the Palestinian state, and specifically Canada. I want to cover a little bit later. But yeah, there will absolutely be a reward for October 7th. It would tell Palestinians that if you commit violence, if you do something, and then you fail at protecting yourself, you let your citizens, both you kill your own citizens afterwards, and then you let your citizens suffer the consequences of you starting a war, you will be rewarded for that. You will get the recognition of the Palestinian state. You will get more funding for UNRWA. You will get in the case of Palestinian Authority, get more funding from the EU, and the world will be not behind Israel that was attacked, but behind you as the attacker, behind you as the perceived victim. So he says all that, and then he pretty much one doesn't really do what is necessary, continues to I guess we'll go into some of the worst things later, but continues to basically play into Hamas's hands when it comes to spreading propaganda, especially when he always talks about the sad side of the either children or women in Gaza, and how this war needs to stop. So Anders, what do you it's kind of hard to guess the motivations of Trump, but what do you make of these statements? Like, how can a person hold saying this is a reward for Hamas, but I will also kind of continue doing it as well?
Well, as we said before, he is a whim-worshipping, contradictory pragmatist. So for him, it's probably not a problem to hold these contradictory ideas at this, if you even want to qualify them as ideas or opinions in his head. And this is just another typical example. You mentioned that it sounds like he's parroting something, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that he heard that from some kind of advisor or expert or whatever that is surrounding him, and that then is the next thing that comes out. But then, he sits down and talks to somebody else, and then he comes up with a contradictory statement. But I don't think he's bothered by that, not at all. It's not like, a contradiction. For most of us who are rational thinkers, we are bothered by contradictions, and over time we try to resolve them because it's uncomfortable to hold them. But that doesn't apply to Donald Trump. So I don't make anything of this statement really, because that's just who he is.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart, even when we sort of listen to Trump, he, I think, openly, I think a few days ago, when it came to sort of Hamas has officially like stopped sort of considering a ceasefire, at least from what we know so far, that negotiations are currently basically not happening. He said, well, maybe there needs to be a different way of realizing it. He also said, the fastest way to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is for Hamas to surrender and release hostages. And on some level, maybe he's thinking that, because the fault lies on Hamas, if he simply continues to talk about the dire need in Gaza, maybe it will force Hamas to do something. But the fact is, if Hamas is the one who doesn't want to engage in negotiations, that seems to suggest they at least think they have the upper hand. And based on what we see coming from around the world, it really does seem like they do have an upper hand. Because if you check, I mean, what's really interesting is if you check the data from about 2 or 3 months ago, when it comes to the state of famine in Gaza by a UN organization, the fact is that 3 months ago, the humanitarian situation in Gaza was the best it ever was since October 7th. So on October 7th, like right after, before even there was a full embargo, before Israel even went in, that it was already worse than it was just 3 months ago. But yeah, Stuart, what do you make of Trump's basically saying well, it is a reward for terrorism?
Well, he's right, but I think it's kind of the same thing as like, saying a clock is right, stopped clock is right twice a day. It's like, no, it really isn't. It's not a functioning clock. So it's not telling time. And I think that's kind of the same thing here. I think Anders nailed it. I think he, whatever advisor was most recently whispering in his ear happened to say something rational. And so Trump is parroting it, as you said. But, the next advisor, the next meme he sees online, whatever, something else will come out. And it literally doesn't bother him that it's contradictory because, as I said, the way his mind works, he doesn't believe that reality is real, essentially. He's a complete social metaphysician. He thinks that, that we create reality with our thoughts, and he thinks he creates reality by, because he's the leader of the free world. So, he gets to create reality. So yeah, I don't get excited even when he says something that maybe word for word is correct, because there's no real cognition behind it. There's no understanding. There's no principle. It really doesn't mean much.
Yeah, and now to sort of move on to, I think, a bit more interesting thing. So, of course, I haven't followed this closely. The only time I follow it is when I see my investments portfolio going down, because I imagine, oh, probably Trump implemented a new tariff. And of course, it did happen. It went down like 3%, lost a little bit of, well, I didn't realize losses yet, so I'm all good. But basically, People might remember that at first Trump put some tariffs on Canada. Then I think he stopped it or like suspended it for a bit, and then that suspension ran out and no deal was made. And then they started maybe talking about the deal, and now he put on a new tariff. So this is what was basically happening. But the reason why I mention it is Canada is another one of the states that is considering recognizing the Palestinian state. Of course, there is going to be the big UN meeting in September next month. So if there are recognitions coming, we might see them come in sort of like as one big deal during the UN General Assembly, and we'll see how many of Western countries will join that. Now, specifically why I mention it is when Trump was talking about the trade deal, he at some point mentioned that there is a possibility, or I'm not sure exactly how he mentioned it, but he sort of said maybe it could be tied if Canada continues considering Palestinian recognition, it might hamper the trade deal. To go to you, Anders, yeah, what do you make of this whole situation? Both Canada considering the recognizing of Palestinian state and Trump trying to use it as basically potential leverage, basically use the trade deal as the leverage against not Canada doing that.
Yeah, I don't know what internal politics causes Canada to do this, but it's obviously ridiculous. It's immoral. There is no Palestinian state, so there's really nothing to recognize. But when it comes to Trump, so we could add to the whim-worshipping pragmatist personality of his power luster as well. And I think that is what we see primarily in this whole tariff debacle, where he is, I'm sure he's getting a kick out of just being able to throwing out these demands on other countries, and if there is anything that he is, I wouldn't call it principle, but consistent maybe, is that he loves tariffs. He has done since the 1980s. And for some reason that has stuck in his mind as something that is good. And I think it just feeds his power-lusting personality that he, with different executive orders, I mean, a lot of it will be challenged in court or is being challenged in court. But in the meantime, he can basically with another Truth Social meme, he can impact world markets and other countries and all that stuff. And I'm sure he's getting a kick out of it. I mean, it's totally irrational. It's totally immoral. Tariffs are immoral, period. There is no rational reason for tariffs. It's a tax on, in this case, American consumers, because we have to pay more for what is coming into the country. And it's also a violation of the individual rights of people in other countries. Now, if other countries want to implement tariffs on the US, well, that is their problem, basically. That is something that US consumers would benefit from, because if foreign taxpayers wants to subsidize products that we consume here in the US, well, it's still immoral to implement tariffs, but we would benefit from it in the short term. There could be a very, very minor exception to this, and that is when we talk about countries that we're at war with or that otherwise are serious enemies. But there are better methods than tariffs, I think, to address that.
Yeah, I mean, just to mention the countries you're at war with, you have embargo on. You usually don't trade with them at all,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
no need to even talk about tariffs. We have a super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and a super chat from Jonathan, thank you so much. And to go to you, Stuart, I mean, when I heard sort of that Trump is potentially using the recognition of the Palestinian state as a sort of like a leverage against the trade deal, I really didn't know how to feel about it. Now, Well, first, some people in the chat are saying, we should find out what internal politics lead to recognizing of the Palestinian state, and I think it's mainly the left, especially, which is most countries that are considering it are currently led by sort of like left-wing parties. They've always wanted to recognize Palestinian state. Now they have a good excuse to do so. The fact is, if you go at something like this alone, it's you might find it hard. But when similarly to America, right? America largely is pro-Israel, but now if there was a truly anti-Israeli president, now they would have a best opportunity to do something about it because of how much sentiment is currently against Israel, even if the large population is still pro-Israeli. So I think it's something similar. Just think about it. It's not like suddenly everybody changed their mind about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It was one nation broke the taboo, which was France, said they will recognize the Palestinian state, and it broke, what is the term, broke the floodgates. Basically, every country now is basically saying, okay, we can be a Western country and basically support terrorism in in a state of, or in the form of the Palestinian state. But sort of going to actual question for you, Stuart, I don't know how I feel about it because first and foremost, I don't want any tariffs to be there. I don't like the idea of trade deals. It should just be gone. There should be no tariffs. It shouldn't be considered as like we only put down our tariffs if you do yours. But that sort of you kind of have to accept that as part of modern pragmatic politics, and sort of tying it to the recognition of the Palestinian state or sort of non-recognition. What do you make of it? Because in some ways you're sort of risking not getting that trade deal.
Yeah, I like you, I have very mixed feelings because I don't think that tariffs are legitimate. They're just immoral, and it's not something our government should be doing in the first place. But given current realities, using it to prevent Canada from recognizing a Palestinian state, it's like, well, I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, I really just the thing is that if it were just Canada, but like you said, France opened the floodgates, and it's much of the Western world, I think, is going to go that way. What's really needed, rather than tariffs to strong arm Canada, is a really principled defense of Israel and understanding that, I think a lot of these countries, or a lot of the people that are supporting this idea of a Palestinian state, just are thinking in very platonic terms about, oh, well, people should be self-governing, and ignoring the fact of what a Palestinian state would be, what it would actually mean, what it has always been in, whenever they've been given a chance to self-govern. So what's really needed is that kind of intellectual work, that kind of intellectual explanation. Just strong arming Canada, maybe would, have some good come out of it, but ultimately I don't think it's going to have much effect. And in the meantime, it's going to punish American consumers even more than they are already being punished.
Yeah, and when it comes to the countries that are recognizing the Palestinian state or considering it, when it comes to sort of what we consider the West, so as we said, France is the one that has basically committed, and now I'm reading also Malta and San Marino are pretty much joining France. Now, of course, nobody really cares about those countries, I'm sorry to say, but still, it's sort of more countries that previously have not recognized it, that now are either committed to recognizing or considering it. And again, the event that made this happen was October 7th, the terrorist attack by Hamas and the Palestinian civilians, for that matter. Now, I think recently in the past we've discussed that also Ireland, Norway, Sweden, and Spain have already recognized it. I think most of them did this after October 7th, so we already have a few. And I know Germany and Portugal and Australia are also considering it, and of course Canada and United Kingdom. So we have pretty much the big nations are considering it. Almost all G7 nations. I haven't heard much from Japan, but I don't know how much they are interested in this. But America and Japan would pretty much at this point are the only one who are not considering that. So again, this is a reward for terrorism. Stuart, do you want to jump in?
I would just say that, if there was somebody in the Palestinian world that were proposing an actual semi-free country, I'm not opposed in principle to the idea of a Palestinian country if it had rule of law and semi-freedom. But that's not on the table, and it never has been on the table. And that's, I think, what the point that we need to be making is, like I said, I think people have this idea of what a Palestinian state would be that is completely divorced from the reality. And I think that needs to be, I think that's the only way to stem the tide here, is to make that very clear.
Well, let's listen to one more a statement from Trump I have.
Senator Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that what is occurring there is a genocide. Do you agree?
Oh, it's terrible what's occurring there, yeah. It's a terrible thing. People are very hungry. The United States gave $60 million for food, and it's a shame because nobody, I don't see the results of it. And we gave it to people that in theory are watching over it fairly closely. We wanted Israel to watch over it. Part of the problem is Hamas is taking the money and they're taking the food. But we gave $60 million a couple of weeks ago. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody said thank you, but I didn't need to thank you. I just wanted the people to get fed.
Look what a good guy he is. He just wanted the people to be fed. Now, something that's, Anders, you said you don't follow Trump that much, but the fact is, usually you only need to watch like one press conference a week because he just has the same talking points. I've heard this, we gave 60 million people to $60 million to Gaza and nobody thanked us. I think I heard this in like 4 different places so far. But again, the question was Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she's a Georgia congresswoman, has been one of the person really going on a crusade against Israel, and she said what's happening in Gaza is genocide. And his answer to that was what is going on there is terrible. Now, he didn't necessarily say he agrees with it, but he pretty much omitted it and said then that terrible things are happening there. When you say that in the same sentence as genocide is alleged, you are basically fueling in the propaganda. You are basically implying Israel is responsible for this. Now then he goes on to talk about how he simply wants people to get fed. He says 60 million went there, and again, the way he said it, right? It went to the people that theoretically should take care of it. Those people are working under you to some extent. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is handled by the United States as well as Israel. So sort of like trying to somehow escape that responsibility as if this is not also on you, especially if it's American money, right? Like when when the story broke about the US aid and where all the money under Biden was going, we all said this is Biden's fault. Trump said this is Biden's fault. You cannot now say, okay, we sent some money there and somebody should take care of it. No, this is American money that's going there. You should take care of it, or you should make sure this is going where it's supposed to and not ending up in the hands of Hamas, or the aid ending up in the hands of Hamas, as you said yourself. Anders, any comments on either that or sort of the genocide claim by Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Trump's comment on that comment?
Well, so Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's part of the MAGA core, here in the United States, I guess, and I assume I'm not following it closely, but that there is a contingent who are of this opinion. Otherwise, she wouldn't say it. And Trump, he's dependent on his MAGA base. So I mean, this is a perfect example of him as a weather vane, where he's unprincipled and he says, "Oh, I probably need to pander a little bit to this, a little bit to that," and yeah, you get these contradictory statements all the time, and that's why I'm not really paying attention. But anyhow, I wanted to say back to what Stuart mentioned before, that what we really need is a rational defense of Israel's right to exist, and that we don't get that. And I think what's so tragic in all of this is that not even Israel has a rational defense for why it exists. Yes, we need a homeland for the Jews, but there is nobody or very few who are making the case for Israel as being a beacon of Western civilization in a part of the world that is mainly barbaric, at least philosophically and morally. And as long as Israel cannot defend itself, not only militarily, but in the realm of ideas and in morality, they're losing this whole thing. And that's why we see this ridiculous claims of recognizing a Palestinian state, because that is altruism, a sacrificial morality that is obviously dominant in our culture. And as soon as Israel goes on the defensive when it comes to defending its right to exist, then those other forces are starting to crow in and making themselves heard. And we can see that now. So I think that it's not an accident that France and Britain and Canada now are going to potentially add themselves to the group of countries that have recognized the Palestinian state. They see Israel's weakness. And some people may argue that, yeah, if Israel would have been more assertive and gone in and ended this war a year ago or something, that there would have been even more of an uproar. But I disagree with that assessment, because if Israel would have been morally confident, the altruists, the sacrificial animals out there, they would have receded back into the shadows where they belong. And unfortunately, Israel, it seems to be incapable of defending itself rationally.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely plays a big part, but also the fact is that, like, nobody else's country's right to exist is questioned. It's only Israel's who is constantly on this under this weird spotlight where its existence is questioned as the state. Like, nobody questions France, or nobody questions even like countries like Russia or North Korea, for example. We've already said that, oh, we'll basically not discuss how evil those countries are. It's never about the legitimacy on those countries. It's sort of like always the focus on Israel. And yeah, but the solution is, of course, that Israel needs to stand up for itself. So it kind of goes both ways. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And I think somebody said that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not MAGA, and it is kind of true and kind of not, because I think she was MAGA. But also it's not like there are, the ideology of MAGA that if you don't subscribe to that you are kicked out of MAGA. MAGA's number one thing is sort of complete or a certain amount of basically commitment to Trump and support of Trump. And I think besides Israel, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of like on one-on-one with Trump on almost everything, as are most Republicans. So as much as she might sort of like stand out from the crowd when it comes to this, I think she is most likely still part of MAGA. I think maybe somebody more like Thomas Massey, who's also anti-Israel, somebody like him, I would consider not MAGA, since he also steps out of line when it comes to, for example, the budget. While you have Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about there's too much money going into Israel, and then she votes for three trillion deficit budget that Trump puts forward. So I think she should be still considered MAGA. Stuart, any comments on both the earlier Trump's comments or anything else?
Yeah, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is definitely MAGA. I would echo that. And I also wanted to go back to what Anders said. I think that we'd be in a whole different place right now if Israel had gone forward confidently, more with moral certainty, and wiped out Hamas. I think world opinion would be better for a couple of reasons. I think that moral certainty would offend some people, but it also would persuade some people, or at least have them question whether they wanted to support a Palestinian state. But I think that what Anders left out that I think we shouldn't underestimate is just how world opinion and media opinion is very much based on the news cycle and based on, I mean, the world has a short attention span. So there might have been outrage at the time if Israel had gone in strong and really wiped out Hamas. But then world attention would have moved on. The fact that this has dragged on the way it is has continually allowed world attention to be redirected back to this situation and kept it in the limelight, and that's not good when Israel is being weak and not showing moral clarity. It just allows the Palestinian side to slowly kind of wear away and allow people to forget what happened on October 7th. So I think there's multiple reasons why it would have been much, much better to aggressively pursue this early on.
Yeah, Tora worldwide in the chat says we're doomed if we do, and doomed and damned if we're damned if we do, and damned if we don't. I mean, yeah, this is what altruism gets you. I mean, yeah, practicality is against morality. So either you are moral, which means you have to sacrifice all of your values, or in Israeli case, you have to deliver aid to your enemies, and therefore you cannot wage a war, and you will be constantly in this conflict with Palestinians, because they are encouraged to fight forever, since you are supposed to surrender to them forever, or surrender whenever there is a chance the Palestinianism might get wiped out. And yeah, and damned if you do, because when you try to be actually practical in altruist morality, you are immoral. So this is why Israel is getting sanctions, or sort of not getting actual sanctions, but sort of is getting the pushback against itself. Again, I've always said so that Israel needs to realize that no matter how good it tries to be to Palestinians, the world will hate Jews, and the world will hate Israel forever. So it needs to realize it, and it needs to realize that it needs to do what is necessary. Because again, look at countries, and again, I hate the fact that we don't have an example of a good country standing up for itself and being able to defend it. We only have the evil countries. The fact that Iran is able to get away with developing nuclear weapons, North Korea was able to get away with developing nuclear weapons, and Russia is able to still get away with like actual war of invading Ukraine, actively killing Ukrainians, is able to get away with that, as well as China. And you'll see once the invasion of Taiwan might happen in the future, how people will look at what China is doing. I have a suspicion there won't be simply a complete condemnation of the Chinese aggression. But yeah, to sort of bring out the last topic, and it sort of brings us back to the start. There is this report by Atlantic, which not the best kind of news source, but talking about sort of Trump's apparent frustration with Netanyahu. There have been some things in the past where sort of Trump didn't like the way Netanyahu is behaving. One of the recent examples is, of course, the humanitarian situation in Gaza, where Trump has been sort of maybe not outwardly saying something against Netanyahu, but definitely seems like he has a problem with it, problem with the situation, as well as we could take the Iranian situation, the fact that it didn't go as far as it needed, and then we could also consider, I mean, that report about apparently stopping Israel from taking out Ayatollah Khamenei. But yeah, Anders, what do you think that is sort of like a falling out between Trump and Netanyahu, and do you think this has an effect? Maybe, well, we know Trump's memory is not that good, but when Netanyahu congratulated Biden in 2020, Trump was not happy about it.
No, but then Netanyahu, didn't he nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize or something here not too long ago? So, I have no clue. That's basically my answer. Again, we just go back to and the fact that what Trump says or feels today is may change tomorrow. So I really don't have a comment. If Stuart has any more insightful comments here, I'll let him chime in.
Well, I can bring in one more thing. I think this was two administration officials reported by the Atlantic has said that apparently Trump thinks Netanyahu is trying to prolong this war to stay in power. Now, this is basically something we've heard since October 7, I think, from anti-Israel people, that basically the whole reason why the war is still going on is because once it stops, one, Netanyahu will get out of government, and possibly Netanyahu will go into prison. So I think, again, this is like talking about this, I think it's just fueling the anti-Israeli propaganda for whatever Netanyahu is and wherever he should actually be. The fact is that the problem with the Israeli actions in Gaza were not that it wasn't strong enough or that this was taking too long. The reason why it's taking so long is because of the amount of precaution Israel wants to take. And again, it's sort of, I think you are also putting too much credit to Netanyahu, that if he was sure that nothing bad would happen to him, that he would actually go full on, or he would actually fight the war properly. I don't think we have enough to suggest that. But yeah, Stuart, any comments on either of those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that Netanyahu wants to stay in power. I think he is a power luster. But I agree with you. I don't think there's evidence that, that's the deciding factor that's keeping him from pursuing this. That if it all else being equal, he would be, doing the right thing and moving forward aggressively. I don't think there's evidence for that either.
All right. With that, I think I've run out of most of the things I wanted to discuss from Trump's recent things. Deborah in the chat says that's BS. The Atlantic is just projecting. Netanyahu isn't going to prison. Even the judge said there is no evidence of any crime. So I haven't followed the corruption sort of scandal, you could call it, at all. I don't care enough to follow Israeli politics that closely. The amount of Israeli politics I already follow is too much to watch every single corruption scandal. So yeah, with that, Anders, any last thoughts from you? and where can people find you? As well as if you think if there is some other thing Trump has said recently you'd like to bring up, you can also comment on that.
I have nothing comes to mind in terms of what Trump has or hasn't said. We have been throwing around a lot of terms here: altruism, self-sacrifice, whim worshipping, irrationality, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if all viewers are familiar with these terms, but I would just put in a plug for the Ayn Rand lexicon, which is an excellent source to start at. If you have a term that you don't recognize, it's most likely covered there. And I find it helpful often in when it comes to current events, actually, to kind of go back there and use that as a starting point, and then I can go and dig deeper into other in the works of Ayn Rand that are referenced there. So just a plug for the Ayn Rand lexicon. Just put it into your search, and you get to it, and you can bookmark it, obviously, and it's easily accessible and a terrific resource. You can find me on Substack, andersingemarsson.substack.com, and my book Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right is available on Amazon.
Stuart, anything else you'd like to bring up, and where can people find you?
I also have a Substack, stuartmargolis.substack.com, and I am pretty active on Facebook as well. Yeah, I guess just my closing comments would be, while I also don't follow Israeli politics that closely, I don't have I don't have any doubt that there's corruption in the Israeli government as there is here, but I don't think that that's the primary problem. I think the primary problem is that Israel itself doesn't understand why it deserves to exist. I think that, there's still a lot of this idea that they belong there because there were Jewish people there 3,000 years ago. That's, from an objective standpoint, from my standpoint, that's not why they should be there now. I think if they had more moral clarity about Western values, about the value of a free country, they would be just stronger and more able to defend themselves in all ways.
We have
October 7 would probably not have happened in the first place.
We have a super chat from Mary. Thank you so much. And with that, let me remind people that today's episode of The Reality Show was sponsored by the Objectivist Guide to the Galaxy. You can find more about them following the link in the chat and in the description. You can buy the book on Amazon, The Objectivist Guide to the Galaxy. Thank you guys for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective. Until then, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.